America, my name is Osei-Frimpong, and you're watching The Black Athenians. And today we're going to talk to you about institutional abuse and the way people tend to abuse their power. Now, I was thinking about the marshmallow test yesterday, and the marshmallow test is that test where, you give a kid a marshmallow, or you give them an option of getting one marshmallow now or 4 or 5 down the road. And apparently, if you don't have discipline, you take the marshmallow now, but if you have discipline, you'll just take the 4 or 5 down the road. But it turns out that has more to do with the stability of the kid's world. If they live in a horribly unstable world, they take the marshmallow now. If they live in a very stable world, they'll be like, oh, no, I'll just take my marshmallows, plural, later. All right, so this was used to show that black kids lack discipline and forethought. But really, it was just a reflection on how unstable America is for black kids, because they did the same marshmallow test out in Africa, and it turns out the African kids took the 5 or 6 marshmallows down the road because even if they were poor, their life was more stable and the world kind of worked in a certain way. And not as many people lied to them. Being black in America means that everybody's lying to you all the time. So I'll just take my marshmallow now. Thank you. And I was just thinking about that in terms of myself. I don't apply for things anymore. I'm not anti-application, and it's not because I'm ignorant, it's because I've served on too many committees. It's because these people are awful at wielding power. So once you serve on a few committees and they close the door, and then you see all these white people, or even some black people, but mostly white people, who are just really bad at wielding power and do it in the most venal, small, unthoughtful ways. It's just hard for me to take committee seriously now. And anything I have to apply for, I think it's referred to a committee. I just don't want to do it. I'll take a test. I'll take an audition. I like an election. But in terms of an application that goes to a committee to review, no. Because we don't teach people who are good at, we don't teach people how to wield power at all. I talk to my students about this. Every semester I say, who taught you how to wield power? And most of them say nobody. And you have to understand, I teach at UGA. All my students are going to be managers of something. They're going to be making hiring and firing decisions. They're going to be making big decisions. And nobody taught them how to wield power. I mean, they learned how to wield power in my class because I'm very good at my job. But other than that, for the most part, they just end up being the most venal sort of bosses you can imagine. And they just wield power according to their mood, which is one reason why the Donald Trump impeachment's not going to go anywhere. Because we don't care about if you wield power responsibly or irresponsibly. We don't even know what that means. He did what we teach people they can do, which is once you get power, you use it for yourself. And that's America, unfortunately. But it doesn't have to be. And we screw up all institutional power, including the office of citizenship. You'll hear people who should know better saying, well, I get to vote for who I want to. Don't tell me who to vote for. And I shouldn't have to think about anything but what's good for me. That's a horrible way, that's an abuse of power. Being a citizen is an office, and it's a different office than being a civilian. If you take your sensibility as a civilian into the voting booth, you just abused your office of citizenship. And we're going to talk about what that means. And we're going to do it all after the beat. Go ahead and hit it, Matthew.
To the beat, y'all.
Yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I paint the White House black and ain't no future in your front.
So we are bad at being all of the things that have titles. And in order to be anything in these United States or anything in the world, you are a thing with title insofar as you're a person, right? So here's how this works. And I'm not going to do the entire derivation. I teach philosophy. I could do this for a long time. I do what I do for the people, so I'm just going to give you the punchline. To be an individual, you need to be a unique member of a group. I'll say that again. To be an individual is not just to be some other individual out there. It's to be a unique member of a group. If you're not a member of a group, you're a nothing. But you don't have to be a member of the group like everybody else is a member of the group. You're a member of the group like you're a member of the group, which is different than the way everybody else is a member of the group. And importantly, different than the way everybody else is a member of the group. So when you will your, action as an individual, it's always within the structure of a group, and you're willing both the group identity and your individuality. As a distinct from all the other members within that group. Right? So I just said a lot of words, and it's not going to make sense, but the more you think about it and talk to your friends about it and think about it again, you'll just realize I was right. And yes, that's just the case. If you want to be an individual, you need to be a unique member of a group. That means anytime we destroy groups, we're actually destroying people's individuality. It's like, I imagine if, what was it like to be Ringo when John and Paul decided to break up the Beatles? Like, he went to bed a Beatle and then woke up like, I don't know, a guy with sticks. Or what's it like to be Kelly when Beyonce decides to leave? And she went to bed a member of Destiny's Child and woke up and there was no more Destiny's Child. And she doesn't get to be an individual member of Destiny's Child because there's no more Destiny's Child. Does that make sense? Kelly or Michelle, either one of them, right? So you have to understand that what you are as an individual is an individual member of a group, a unique member of a group. And that means when you will yourself, when you act, you're upholding your individuality through upholding your uniqueness as a member of a group, which means you're also caring for the group identity. A lot of people say Trump doesn't reflect us. Trump's not our president. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. The other people in the group, that is what it is to be an American, decided he was, and that you got outvoted. And that's a problem, but you can't pretend that Trump is not the president of the nation that you are a citizen of, because that's just how it worked out. Unfortunately, what you do as an American isn't up to you. What you are as an American isn't even up to you. Not unilaterally, you share that particular identity among all of the other people who share that particular identity. But they're not Americans like you're an American. You're a unique kind of American, right? So you want to unilaterally decide what it means to be an American, but you don't get to do that. You do get to unilaterally decide a little bit about what it is to be your kind of American, to an extent. But insofar as you are a thing, insofar as you're an individual, you're a unique thing. Insofar as you're a thing, you're a universal, and a universal ranges over all sorts of other particulars that also share that universal trait. All right, so like I said, what I do here is philosophy, political philosophy. I know some people, might get some sort of way about this. I don't talk about pop culture. I do like Lizzo. I talked about that a little bit last week. I think she's fantastic. I saw her in an interview. I think she is A-okay. She's not a problem with America. But what I do is philosophy. I'm trying to help you be a better person and help you kind of be less confused about where you might be mistaking, decisions in your life. So the inability of black people to actually support their own institutions or institutions which they have power means that we don't get to be individuals either. All of our actions are determined by our membership in groups that are not, that we don't determine at all. So this is why if you're working for some other corporation or if you're just some man's boy, you are exactly some man's boy, and you don't have to be some man's boy like everybody else is some man's boy, but you are indeed some man's boy, and that is your identity. That's just where you are. And right now, America is like we are some man's people as black people. And that's where you are. You can't just deny. You can't make sense of yourself without making sense of yourself as a member of a universal. That means a member of a group in which there are other particulars. But there's differentiation between the particulars, or else they'd all collapse and be the same. So you don't have to be black like everybody else is black. You're a unique black, but you are black. And it's important that you're black. And it's important that you actually take a stand on what being black means, because you don't want other people to determine what blackness is, because insofar as they determine what blackness is, that means they get to determine kind of the general parameters of how you can be unique, and you don't want that. So you want both a say in your individuality Within the group, you want to say in which group, and you want to say in the group you happen to be in. All right? Like I said, I just dropped a lot of stuff on you. Matthew, I think they might be tired of hearing me talk for a little bit, so what do you have to say about what I said?
I'd like to say that a lot of people mistake uniqueness for being entirely self-centered. If you're in a part of a group and like you're only in your self-interest, you're just a parasite. You're not an individual. It takes a collective and an individual working together for the benefit for the group identity to be an individual. It's not merely about the individual just sponging everything up and going off on their own, like Beyonce.
Right. That's like, yeah, you can't just go off your own and be a thing. You're a thing that nobody can understand. Even, I mean, some artists who try to take this to all the way and then they end up without a genre and then nobody can understand what they did. I don't know how to understand. I don't understand that. Because they're not, like, to be an artist, you're still a unique member of a group. You need to be in a medium. You can shape what kind of medium you're in, but if you're in a medium that nobody understands, doing a thing that nobody understands, like you're unintelligible. You're not doing art. you're completely unintelligible. So individuality is purchased by being a unique member of a group, right? So when you will your individuality, you're not just helter-skelter. You're willing your uniqueness within the membership of the group, and you're also willing the group, what the group is. And like what other people who also participate in that group are, all right? Like I said, and that's why you know a lot of people in these relationships, they wake up married, they go to bed married, and they wake up, single, alone, or divorced. Someone is taking unilateral decision about what you are because they've changed the way you can interact in the world as a member of a group. You are no longer a married individual. You are just Bob. All right, whatever that means, and that might not mean much. So yes. So what happens when people like abuse institutional power? Right? They're screwing with everyone else's individuality. Right? When you abuse institutional power, you're messing with other people's individuality because you're shaping the structures of the group through which they individualize themselves or a unique member. That's what's at stake. And so our freedom as individuals is tied to our freedom as individual institutional actors. And so when you act, you have to act with like everyone else's freedom in mind as other institutional actors and not just do what you want when you want to. And this includes being in the office of citizenship, right? Let's say I am and this isn't how people act, this is how people should act, right? How people act is, this is America, I can just do what I want to, when I want to, because I want to. But then they're surprised when they can't really keep friends, or they really can't build anything because that depends on other people, or when they're just kind of vaguely miserable because they don't have any meaningful relationships or any meaningful institutional interactions because their boss is capricious. And black people, we are under capricious bosses. And this is especially important for us because our employers, they think they can do what they want to when they want to, unless you have a union, either an uncle who's a lawyer or a union representative, they can do whatever they want to. So your life isn't really yours. Insofar as you're a member of the group, you're a member of an oppressive group, and you just have to will yourself in the way that makes your fickle boss happy, or they will just toss you out. And that's America. And that's because your boss doesn't know or doesn't want to learn how to wield institutional power. And this includes even people who walk into the ballot box who think, well, I get to vote how I want to because I want to. No, you can do that, but you're not upholding the office of citizenship. There's very little that's different qualitatively between what you're doing and Trump just using the U.S. government to get rich. Except there's a little bit more media attention, so he might get caught. But he can just make the argument that, I'm just doing what everybody does. To which most people in America will be like, well, yeah, that's kind of true, because I'll be honest, if I were in the office, I'd do the same thing. So when we take a natural relationship like property, and when I say natural relationship, that means we just don't need any other capacities but like the ability to recognize something as somebody else's. It just doesn't depend on any other institutions, just recognition, a faculty that we have, as opposed to like being an NBA champion, which depends on there being something called the NBA, which depends on there being something called professional basketball, which depends on there, as opposed to amateur basketball, which depends on there being something called basketball. And so like there are all of these other institutional relationships that need to uphold before you have an NBA champion. Whereas property, you don't need anything except your capacity to recognize something as someone else's and lay off, or something as yours with the group recognition that it's yours. And that's a natural capacity, right? So if we start thinking of all of our institutional roles as just property, something we can do with what we want to, and everyone ought to recognize us as being able to do it with what we want to, then we're going to just get widespread institutional corruption and abuse. And like almost failed states, right? Because the state's only going to be as big or as all of our institutions are only going to be as rigorous as our policing mechanisms. And we can't police everything. We can't police everything. So we need people to actually understand that in those closed door meetings, when you're thinking, well, do I hire the black guy who makes me nervous? Or do I just go with boring Becky? Well, we know how this ends. It's America, so they go with boring Becky. But they should feel a little bit bad about that. They should feel at least a little bit bad about that. And I'm giving you why. Because that's an abuse of institutional power. And when you think, and we just don't teach people how, when they're a member of an institutional body, they have to actually think of the whole of the institutional body as like an institution of freedom. And that's different. So people take this, it goes two ways. One way, they say, well, I can do whatever I want because I want to, because it's mine, whether you're talking about the presidency or you're talking about being a citizen or you're talking about being a voting member of some committee or board. It's mine. I can do whatever I want to. Nobody can tell me anything different. This is one way of abusing power. The other way of abusing power is just being a big institutional person, just saying, well, I have to do it the way everybody else has done it before me because that's the way it's done. Both ways are shortcuts to thinking and shortcuts to actually enabling people to be free within the institution. And black people, if you do it, if it's either people doing it as a matter of like preference or doing it as a matter of that's the way it's always been done, none of that is good for us. Like none of that leads to black freedom because we've never had it. And if we just leave it all up to the market, people tend to choose away from black people. There's that Texaco executive who said, it's not really employment discrimination. These black employees are just like black jelly beans. They just kind of stick to the bottom of the bag as everybody picks around them. That's us, black people. So if we just use it to everyone just like being able to do whatever they want, when they want to, because they want to, or doing it as they've always done it because that's how they've always done it, we lose either way. We only become free when people start thinking. And we actually start to expect people to start thinking. Because right now, if you talk to these political consultants, and I happen to talk to quite a few political consultants, they'll be like, well, voters don't really care about these highfalutin arguments about rights and thought. They just want someone they like. And that might be true because we've trained an awful electorate who's really entitled to just kind of voting for what they like because they like it. However, if candidates then start appealing to that as like a measure of their candidacy, then nobody knows. Then it just starts a horrible circle and you get these candidates then you get Trump. Honestly, Trump appeals to what people like because they like it, and the people like what they like because they like it, and everyone wins except for black people, which is America, right? So I hope this was at all clear about how easy and seductive it is to abuse institutionalized power once you take your institution, whether you're talking about being a citizen, whether you're talking about being a member of an office, as just a piece of property that you can do with what you will. And I hope you also understand that the point of the institution is to actualize freedom for other members in the institution, including yourself, because you're a member of the institution. So you will the institution, you also will the particulars that entails that you will like the other particular members and the differentiation between them. And if you want it to be a free institution, that means you will their freedom. That means you don't have predatory habits as like, a person acting within that institution. So I hope this has made a little bit sense. I hope this foments. If anything I have said has made a little bit of sense, go ahead and go to thefunkyacademic.com and sign up for a $5, $15, or $50 membership. Because honestly, this is why black people get fired. Like, this is why black people get fired, why black people can't get hired. This is why, because people don't want to be made uncomfortable. And black people, especially straight black men, I'll be honest, make people uncomfortable when they're black enough. This lost Mercer Hellish period job.
When they're picking up the trash, when they're walking outside to get the mail.
I shouldn't have to be uncomfortable. Yeah, I shouldn't have to, like, how many people in power just think, well, I just shouldn't have to be uncomfortable. There's this great story about Catherine McKinnon when she was, Martha Nussbaum told me this story. Not just me, it was in class when I was at the University of Chicago. Catherine McKinnon is a law professor at the University of Michigan. She was interviewing for a job at the University of Chicago in the 80s, and she's a striking figure, the white lady with a very tight bun and very serious demeanor. I saw her speak. I thought she was fantastic. I think even if I don't agree with her, you just have to kind of be impressed with like how she does that part of the job. So I saw her speak, and I was impressed with her. And so Nussbaum's talking about McKinnon's interview, and then after the interview, the committee gets together. And having been in a bunch of these committees, they're absolutely as awful as you think. So these committee gets together in the 80s, and it's just a bunch of old Chicago lawyers and trying to decide whether they're going to take this young upstart, Catherine McKinnon, on faculty. And what they do, like one of the faculty members in the committee is this old guy who's like, I just think she hates men. She makes me nervous. My assistant's hot, and I don't want her looking at me because of that. And I just don't like that. So they didn't give her the job. So Catherine McKinnon then goes over to Michigan, makes a huge name for herself, becomes a big deal. But you have to understand that that's the kind of venal smallness in politics. Now, when you use the institutional power, it doesn't mean you have to use it like everybody else is using it. In fact, it's important that you don't use it like everybody else is using it. But you have to use it with everybody else and their freedom in mind for the whole. Right? You have to, because you're sustaining the institution. So I hope this has been a little bit enlightening, or just you'll start to see people who use their institutional role as if it's their private property all of the time. You'll start to see it, and hopefully you'll start to become disgusted, and at least you'll be able to at least show them this video, or you go back through this video a few times and you have your own notes, and you'll be able to explain it to them. And I'm just going to recap in 2 minutes in case you miss any of it. A lot of people think freedom is this principle that I can just do whatever I want when I want to, and if I can't do that, then I'm being oppressed. However, that will lead you to a case where, people won't show up for dates. Or you get like random no-fault divorces, or you'll just get arbitrarily fired, or all institutional relationships between two people won't mean anything. Because people say like, well, okay, what if I promised you to do X? I didn't feel like it, so I didn't do it. Don't try to control me. That is the life, this principle of freedom as a principle, puts forth in the world. Complete instability. That's a principle of freedom that can never be realized. Can never be realized. Because at any point in time, anyone can break any commitment at any time because they want to. And so we'll always feel vulnerable to other people's feelings. And then people who believe in this as a principle of feeling, as a principle, will abuse institutional power because they'll think of it all as like just their whim and their preference. Right? So freedom has to be more than a principle. It has to be realized in action when you particularize yourself as a unique member of a group. So when you particularize yourself, you don't just particularize yourself, you're particularizing the universal under which you're a particular member. So when you act as a spouse, you're not just acting as a spouse in a vacuum. There's another spouse in which you have another relationship with. So you're acting as a particular spouse in a dyad, in a two-person relationship, and you have to act as a particular spouse in a way that kind of allows the other person to act as that same kind of particular spouse. And since you want to act freely, you want to act in a way that also preserves their freedom and respect, right? And respect actually is an important part of this, because that's how freedom gets in the world, through kind of a mutual respect. When I talk about property relationships, a property relationship isn't between myself and this pot. The property relationship is between myself and you who want this pot, but you're not going to take this pot because you recognize it as mine. So that means I can leave the room and you'll still respect this as my pot because you recognize it as mine. This is why you can't have a property relationship with someone who's a pathological, because if someone's pathological, then they're just going to take what they take because they're not free to actually respect you as a person. So I hope this has made some sense. I hope the next time you go and vote or talk to people about voting, you're not going to engage in the fiction that citizenship isn't an office. It's just a matter of personal preference. And actually, you'll think about all of the other people who are part of the body politic out of which you're a citizen. And vote with that relationship in mind. Doesn't mean that your vote isn't yours as a unique member of a unique citizen. You don't have to vote like everybody else votes. But you do have to vote judging like the role and the duty and the mission of citizenship with that in mind, and not just like how you feel that day. All right, so Matthew, what's going on?
I don't have like all the moves stitched together, but I think it is something pointed out by Marcuse in The One-Dimensional Man of how sort of the abuse of institutional power is socially engineered through means of like entertainment and presenting false choices to people. A lot of people think that the choices and the actions that they take are meaningful in ways that they really aren't.
Yeah, right. So there's an entire industry that says treat yourself. Like you should just do what you want to because you want to. It's called self-care, call it whatever you want. Call it any Shonda Rhimes show. Call it like you go queen. And that's going to lead to these huge divorce rates, and that's going to lead to these unstable relationships and like these mercenary business relationships. And a lot of lonely, depressed people who don't know why they're lonely and depressed, but because they're mercenaries. And if you're in a mercenary relationship, any external shock will just any change in the calculus might go your way. Look, when you marry a black person, that rich or poor means something, because we swing. You're gonna have to just ride that out. So unless you understand what that means, those vows can't be just at your whim, because we do tend to swing. All right, I hope this has been at all helpful. And if you like what I'm doing, go ahead and go to funkyacademic.com, because, doing what I'm doing is making me darn near unemployable, but very entertaining. I will tell you, I am probably one of the most disinvited Negroes on this planet. When I say disinvited, I get invited to a lot of things. I always get invited because people like to hear me talk, and I'm very good. And depending on who you talk to, I'm charismatic. And when I clean up a lot, I'm actually not the worst looking dude. So I get invited to a lot of things. And then they start talking to other people. And then like a day before I'm supposed to go and speak, I get an email saying we talked to our board. And so that happens to me at a standard deviation more than it happens to other Negroes. So I need your support to keep this going. So go to thefunkyacademic.com and sign up for $5, $15, or $50 a month. and keep me going and help me grow what I'm doing here.
And before you close, you should tell people where we will be next week.
Oh, next week it's going to be a secret. I'm going to tell them afterwards. I promised a secret,
Okay.
but it's going to be big, and it might be in Kentucky. All right, I'll see you. Peace.